juicy episode for you this week. We are going to be talking to the Mold Hound. Viktoriya is amazing when it comes to mold. She went through her own personal journey through severe mold exposure, which we talk about in this episode, and she gives you some tidbits of what her journey was like, what that was like in the medical system, how testing ended up being her saving grace for realizing that it was mold, and the protocols that she used to come through it. Her story is very inspiring for anybody who has experienced mold toxicity and mold illness. You know what it can be like to not have a voice, to not feel heard, and to honestly feel crazy in your head that what's going on in your body is actually true. So buckle up for today's episode and you're really going to enjoy it. You're going to love everything that Viktoriya has to offer. All right, guys. So I'm really excited. We have Viktoriya on the podcast today. She is a wealth of knowledge when it comes to mold, pesticides, you name it, herbal medicine. So I'm really excited to have you here. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
And I'm really excited to tell everyone your story because I've gone through your page. Your page is amazing. And guys, I'm going to have her page in the show notes so you can check it out too. But I want to start off with your story with mold because like many of us who have gone through our mold journey, there was, the mold exposure and then going through lines of professionals that didn't necessarily know what was going on. So in your words, what was that like for you? And kind of tell everyone what you went through.
So this is like I always say, it's the club you never want to be part of, but it's a great club to be in.
Yeah, for sure.
So I was fairly healthy, growing up. I mean, everyone has their issues here and there, but I got married and I got, I started having kids and my health just slowly started declining. And I kind of attributed it to, just having a baby, you're nutrient deficient and all of that stuff. But my health was kind of, I would say I had a lot of friends that were moms and it was a bit weirder than everyone else's, it wasn't just the fatigue, like I would get heart palpitations, I would get tingling all over. I was like running to the bathroom all the time, but so it took me a second to understand that it was something else going wrong other than just, classic motherhood, because every time I went to the doctors, that's kind of what they kept telling me. Like, it's, you just had a baby and you probably have some postpartum depression. And I'm like, I don't feel depressed, but my body's not doing so hot.
Right.
So, it took me a second. And then, once already my second baby was already a year and a half, you're already out of that stage and my symptoms just kept plummeting. I was at the point where, for me, making a sandwich was difficult. Like I would make a sandwich and I would sit on the floor in my kitchen and I would just be like breathing like, so heavily because I'm so out of breath. And it was just the simplest tasks. And, within months, I got to the point where I was like bedbound.
Okay.
I was tired all the time. I was having a lot of neurological issues, head pressures, tingling all over my body, heart palpitations, horrible GI issues. Like it's hard for me to talk about the symptoms because when people are like, oh, what symptoms do you have? I actually recorded it and I had about 150 total from beginning to end. But through a day, I could have at least easy 20 symptoms. Like that was not something that, I remember it like yesterday. I was driving to the store feeling completely normal. And about 5 minutes into the road, all of a sudden I feel like I'm, losing consciousness and I'm calling my husband and he's like, what street are you on? And I'm driving and I'm like, I'm almost home. And I'm like dying. And then, like, and then I'd like fall on the floor and it was, I don't think you can fully put into words. And I think most people with a mold story, with most illnesses right now, you can't, you basically put this huge story into this 5-minute thing where it was my life just plummeting and going in circles and I had no idea what was happening. And I went to like 30 something specialists and I was tested for rare diseases. I was tested for cancers and autoimmunes and everything. And at one point already, I remember one of my doctors was like, if you ever figure it out, can you give me a call? Like, I'm actually curious about you. Like I became this mystery,
Right.
And I recall even asking one of my doctors about mold because I mean, we all know about it. It's not like it's this taboo subject that nobody knew about, but it's not something I knew that can cause this amount of symptoms. I was always told it was respiratory or something like that. And plus, when you have no mold that you can see in your house, I mean, so that was never really an afterthought until I got to the point where, I mean, as I said, I had so many symptoms going on. I couldn't function. I was just not functioning. And at some points I already thought I was going to die. Like I
Right.
remember thinking my kids were going to lose their moms. I don't think you can prepare for that, but I definitely had those moments where I was like, should I start writing letters? Should I start having some kind of backup plan? Should I start talking to family members and telling them what to do if anything happens to me? Like, because
Mm.
I mean, you're basically dying. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
you're
No, I,
it kills your body. I mean, so I got to that point, and then I remember we went on a trip and I lost eyesight in my eye,
right.
and it was just out of nowhere, just kind of gone. And that's kind of the point where I think a lot of the doctors were like, when I came back and I'm like, I can't see, um, they were like, okay, this isn't in her head. Something's going on, and again, the
Right.
testing started and everything, and still I got no answers. It was just, you have to live with this, maybe it's just, maybe you have overstressed system and all of this stuff. And and then I remember a friend told me again about mold, and I was weary of it because I had already had asked doctors about it. They said no, and I just decided to test myself. I'm like, what, at this point, what do I have left to lose? And I felt like something else was going on. I mean, once again, you do get to a point where you want to give up,
Yep.
but you also have that fight inside you, at least for me, where like I just felt like, for me, God kept telling me, keep going, this isn't it.
Right.
And I got tested and my levels were just off the charts.
Okay.
And
Yep.
as you know, if you can take a excuse me, if you take a mycotoxin urine test, it could be from previous exposures because that's the one I did.
Yep.
So we kind of were like, okay, is it from a previous exposure? Is it from now? But I was working with an ND that was, a close friend of mine, and she was like, look, with these kind of levels, with how you're feeling, I would test your home.
Mm-hmm.
So we got, three inspectors come out to our home, and I was like, can you guys, is it there? And they all kept telling me, no, we have a clean home. Our house
Wow.
is a foreclosed home. So when we bought it, it was just, white paint, beautiful home, empty.
Right.
Um, and we did have a mold inspection. I know that's the main question. Everyone was like, you didn't get it mold inspected. We did.
Yep.
We didn't find it. And so we had that, but I kept feeling that something was wrong. Like we just, you have that gut feeling, and
Intuition.
like, yeah, intuition. And everybody thought we were just crazy at that point. We didn't even tell most people what we were doing because you kind of even feel like you're going crazy because you can't
Yeah.
at this point we didn't find it yet, so like we don't know if it's there. But I'm like, I kept telling him like something's off. Every time I'm in this house I don't feel good. We
Mm.
go on vacation, I'd feel not great, but I'd feel much better. So a friend of ours told us about a mold dog, which we were like,
Right.
oh, mold what?
Yeah.
We were so desperate at that point that, I mean, I actually even considered living in a tent at one point, like on my deck, because I was like, I don't know what to do already. I was so desperate. So we got the mole dog to fly out, and we didn't know what we were gonna find. And at first he just kept sitting down and pointing everywhere, and I remember the inspector was like, stop, like, what are you doing? Stop stopping everywhere. And
Right.
we're confused. And he's like, he was telling us later, he's like, I didn't realize that he was showing me that it's everywhere. Like it was just everywhere. And
Right.
he's like, I got confused at first. So when we started opening up we moved into an RV, we put it right
Okay.
next to our house, and we
Yeah.
lived in this like little RV. And we kind of went down, okay, we're going to start ripping apart the walls and see what's, if there's something there. Like we put, tape everywhere where he stopped, and it was everywhere. It was
Mm.
riddled. And then we had a neighbor later on tell us that the house actually got fully flooded, the
Okay.
whole bottom floor, because I guess a pipe burst when the other guy moved out and it was empty. And you know, that's another question. Everyone's like, your neighbors didn't tell you? Well, when they came into the house, it was clean and white when they got to see it. So they
Right.
thought, they saw the companies come in, they thought it was taken care of.
Right.
So it was never a subject. So, when they told us that, we were like, okay, we have a problem.
Right.
And we
Yeah.
started ripping apart walls, and it was just everywhere. It was all the walls, it was all the ceilings, it was everywhere.
That
Every color you can possibly think of.
Yeah. I mean, your body will tell you. Like, and when I see mold, like, I mean, your story is very, very similar to mine. Like, same kind of thing with a house that was like rebuilt, but they didn't actually, they just covered up the mold. They had like black mold in the basement. So it was like very, very similar things. And I know on your page too, like the first things that doctors were saying to you was like panic attacks, right? Like anxiety and panic attacks. And I had the same thing. I got panic attacks, or like I was driving and I was getting panic attacks. And I'm like, this is really odd because I've never had panic attacks before, but like you just feel like you're having a heart attack when you're
Yeah.
driving. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, very like similar timeline, very similar thing. But it took me a long time to figure out what it was. Like at least you got to the root to it. I would say like pretty fast. Like I know it took you time, but at least it was like faster and then you could remediate it. So I'm curious what your healing journey like. So you found out that there was mold. What was the next step for healing for you?
So, mine was a little bit unconventional in the sense of I didn't go straight into, so I had been doing protocols for 6 years. Like the whole
Right.
time I was sick, I went to naturopath after naturopath. And once again, not all holistic or naturopaths are also, understand mold. This is something that
Yep.
right now I would say even on Instagram is coming out a lot more in social media.
100%.
When I was sick, like this was 2, 3 years ago, this was not talked about. Like at least I couldn't find it. Like I felt alone. I couldn't find any groups. Like maybe they were out there, but it wasn't as out there as, now that I'm seeing that, like, you have so many pages and so many people coming out with their stories. I
Right.
remember only knowing two girls talking about these weird mystery symptoms, and I kept like messaging them, like, can you guys tell me more about it?
Right.
Um, but so I had been doing protocols like for leaky gut, for this, like I did so many protocols. Some made it so much worse. I did, parasite cleanses.
Yep.
I went on an anti-inflammatory diet. I went on one diet where I did for 6 months. All I ate was steamed vegetables and fish. So I still
Oh.
can't look at salmon without
Yeah, without gagging.
without gagging. But that made it, worse because I didn't know what was going on, but I basically depleted my system. Then, yeah, maybe it took off some of the inflammation, but I was so weak at that point, and I just took out a whole bunch of foods that I probably shouldn't have.
Right.
But you're fighting for your life, so you're doing everything possible. So at that point, I had already been on every protocol you can possibly think of.
Okay.
So when we got out of the house, we moved into the RV, which if I show photos and videos, people always say, I feel so bad for you. And that's so insane. We lived in that RV for 9 months while we were remediating. It took a while. But the first 2 months, we moved in June. I live in Washington State, so it's like summer, we have rain almost all the time.
Okay.
I moved into the RV and I was so drained and so tired, um, mentally, like I was just done, that when we moved in, I stopped every protocol. I stopped doing anything I did. I stopped the saunas. I stopped everything. And for 2 months, I just worked on my mental state,
Mm.
and we camped and we spent all our time outdoors. I
Yeah.
did a lot of breathing. I did a lot of brain retraining and just calm down my nervous system because I was so mentally exhausted that thinking about remediation and the house. And I mean, you also have to take into account when we moved out, I threw away 90% of our stuff. I
Right.
mean, you just lost baby blankets, you lost books, you lost, photo books.
Right.
If you've been down that road, you do lose a lot of things, and it was just really hard for me mentally to go through. And you just found out your house had mold, and this probably affected your kids, and it's a lot usually for most people. So for me, I just did 2 months of kind of calming down my nervous system, being in nature, which I always do recommend to people. Maybe not 2 months, everyone's different, but I don't think people necessarily take into account how much your mental state is so important in this whole thing, because if
Yeah.
you're in a constant fight or flight, you cannot heal. Like
Mm-hmm.
all the things that I did, all the saunas, all the vitamins, they will not take if you're just in this
Yeah.
constant fight or flight. So we did that. And then, for the rest of the months, I started slowly doing sauna again. I was working closely with a practitioner,
Yep.
and she put me on binders. She put me on a lot of immunosupport vitamins, and I did a lot of just, as I said, brain retraining. I did a lot of dry brushing and red light therapy. And, it was all a slow process. It wasn't all in one
Right.
day. It was just I kind of put in together protocols with, mental state. And it was just you know, live day by day. That's what I had to
Exactly.
do until I
Yeah.
got to the point where I didn't feel like dying.
Right. Right. Which I mean, like every day you're gonna have good days and bad days too, right? Like
Yeah,
there's gonna be like, and you feel like you're turning the corner. Like when I talk about mold, and especially like patients who have mold, I really like it's not that like I want to say I hate mold. It's just because it's super pesky. Do you know
oh,
what
it
I
is.
mean? Like once you're infected with it and you have high loads of it, it's a pain in the butt to deal with. Like, and it takes time, right? Like you said, there's layers of it. So like getting that nervous system down and doing that emotional regulation is like number one. Like that was the biggest thing for me is because I was chronically inflamed all the time.
Yeah,
Right. So it was like I had to learn how to like bring myself down. And then, like, if you're always having those panic attacks and you're like reacting to literally everything in your environment, then you're always going to feel sick. You're always going to feel tired.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So it was like finding that. I'm curious, which mycotoxin test did you do?
So we did the real times laboratories.
Okay. Yep.
Um, my mycophenolic acid, I remember, was really high. Ochratoxin was really high, but I had most of them,
Yep. Yep.
just somewhere on the lower end. But it definitely, I remember when I got those results, it was just like a shock factor. I think everybody kind of has that where like this thing is such a taboo subject where you're like, I don't even know, is this even real? And then like tests don't lie. You get back this test and the bars are just like scaling and you're like, wow, okay. I would say it's like a pivotal moment for people because it's a scary thing because you just got these like horrible results. But for
Right.
me, like, I mean, I went from 6 years of no answers, and like the mind game of living for 6 years of not knowing what's going on with you is pretty scary.
Yep.
And I think most people with this illness go through that where it's really draining. You feel really alone. You're scared because once again, you think you have every illness under the sun. I mean, I don't know how you had it, but I thought I had every autoimmune and every cancer possible because, you
Yeah.
don't know what you have.
Right.
So I remember when I got the results, it was like a weight off the shoulders and at the same time this like whoa
Yeah.
moment.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah,
and that's what I hear from most people. It's like you think that you're going crazy. You do because it's not standard, like you said. Like it is more so, and I'm connecting with more people who are talking about mold, which is great. But I would say, like you said, like 6 years ago, or for me, it was like 8, 10 years ago when it happened. I didn't even put two and two together. Like mold
yeah,
was not on my radar for a good 8 years. And
yeah,
then it was like, well, oh, that's weird. Like let's look at what mold is doing, and then that's very similar to what I had. And then I was like, wow, it's
yeah,
actually like mold. This isn't like just in my head because you do
yeah,
think it's in your head. And specifically, like I said, when I went to doctors, I would come back at like certain times and they'd be like, oh, you were here like last December, for instance, for like the same thing. And they're like, you're probably just stressed with exams. Like it's just the time of year that you're super stressed. And I believed them because I was like, well, I
yeah.
guess that makes sense. Like I'm
You
studying.
do. Yeah.
Right. And I was like, okay, yeah, it's probably in my head. Like it's possible.
Yeah.
Right.
You
So,
you do start believing it. Like I think you get to a point where you're like, okay, this isn't it. But for a while there, like when they're telling you this, you're like, well, I mean, they're the doctors. Like, I mean, I don't have
yeah,
answers, so it must be in my head.
exactly. And I think like there's like I'm glad that you got the objective measurement because that's where people struggle too is like sometimes they'll do the testing and then the testing says it's not there too.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean? Which is like
yeah,
the other layer. It's like, okay, now we move into like the bioscanning is the other kind of
yeah.
testing that I find is effective for like specifically parasites. I don't know how much you know about parasites. I think you're into parasites a lot,
I am
right?
a
Okay,
I'm a
cool.
detox lover.
Yes, let's hear it. I want to hear your viewpoint on parasites. Where are you with that?
I love to hate them.
Okay, good.
No, I once you once you go down, so it's like a big family, the mold, heavy metals,
Yeah,
parasites, it's like we're part of this big family that, it's you it's a rabbit hole, and once you go down it, you cannot come back.
100%. 100%.
Yeah, I definitely went down the parasite route while I still didn't figure out my stuff about mold. And once again, I mold was one of my major issues, but it feeds the parasites, and that I had a, parasite issue too, that's an understatement.
Yeah.
My kids have detoxed from parasites. I detox from parasites. We are, my husband believes in that
Yeah,
we're
good.
we're that family that comes to the events, and when people are like, "Oh, my gut hurts and I have SIBO or I have IBS," I'm like, "It's not IBS."
Yep.
So
Right.
we're pretty proactive with that. Like I figured out the whole parasite thing a long time ago, and we detox at least once to twice a year, but we're pretty active with that. And my daughter's gut issues just improved so much because of it. Like she had such bad issues because of it. So, you know, I think right now, especially the amount of toxins we have,
Mm-hmm.
parasite detoxes and cleanses are just, I mean, it's you need to do that. It's just every other country does it except for ours, from what I understand. It's just
Thank
you
you.
need to do
I
it.
have this like there's the people who believe and then the people who don't believe. And I'm not even gonna lie, like sometimes you get in your head and you're like, because you can't physically see them. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? So it's like
yeah,
you can sometimes physically see them, but majority of the time they're microscopic, they're in other
yeah,
places, and then it's all like the timing game. So it's like, am I just making this up? Like, am I just coming to the conclusion? But it will show up, like I said, on bioscans.
yeah,
And when you dig when you go down the rabbit hole of like actual root cause medicine, right? And that's where kind of I feel like you're at too. It's like, I'm so tired of the medicine that's like, let's just, you have diabetes, so let's just get your sugar down. It's like, I get
yeah,
that, but at the same time, why is your sugar high?
yeah,
Like, let's just talk about what, like blood pressure, for instance. Again, why is it high? Like, why are we not looking at the root of why it's happening? It's like the
yeah.
difference between like band-aiding and cure. If you
And
can cure it.
I think that's what people like when they hear, like, even with my account, when people see it, they're like, "Oh, like, but you're supposed to use medicine if you're really sick." I never said you shouldn't. Like,
No, 100%.
if you have diabetes and you need insulin, or like, you should use it.
Yeah.
I'm not like, "Hey, well, let's disregard all Western medicine."
Mhm.
But like you said, if I'm taking medicine for something, I am going to be asking the secondary question, well, while I'm taking this medicine, or if I have to take this medicine, what is happening inside my body that's causing this to happen? I
Yeah.
mean, I personally have seen so many illnesses, I don't want to say reversed, but even like with mold, because I work with a lot of mold clients. Like,
Mhm.
I worked with one lady, I remember she was saying she basically had dementia. Like, they actually
Right.
already said that she did, but then when she got out of the house, when she started detoxing, she started getting her memory back and she stopped
Mhm.
having those relapses. And once again, I'm not saying that you can cure everything with, there's a lot of illnesses. I'm not trying to put a blanket thing on
Yeah.
everything, but you definitely should be asking questions, especially nowadays. Like, kids are getting sick a lot more than they used to. I'm sorry. I know people don't
Yeah.
like to admit that, but I did not have the same issues my kids do when I was their age.
No.
And I'm not going to wait until they get to my age and start having issues like I did to be like, okay, you need to start figuring it out. No, I'm going to start teaching them now. Like, look, what's going on with you? What are the
Mhm.
things that we can do to get you better? But also, what are the things that we can do to prevent this to continue? I am going to
Yeah.
teach them about whole foods, and I'm going to teach them about detox, and I'm going to teach them about clean water and about red dyes. And
Mhm.
like, my kids know it's like a joke in our
Good.
family, when someone's eating the candy. Not that they never do. They do get a candy and they eat it, but they know, and I'm happy
Yeah.
that they know, because some people think it might be too much or it's crazy, but unless you've lived in the same situation, I think, like for me, that I never want to see them there. And there's genetics, and then there's also the world, and there's toxins, and there's food and everything. And you want to see your kids thrive. I
Yeah.
don't want to see them struggle like I did. It was horrible for my parents to watch me. So
Yeah.
I think once you go down this rabbit hole, like, yes, it can be overwhelming, and you know you shouldn't get overwhelmed by it, because you should take it a day at a time. That's not the point of it. But it's definitely freeing in some ways, knowing that you can heal. Like,
100%. Yeah.
I
Your
think that
body
gives
is so
people hope.
powerful, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, people with a lot of illnesses, I think that's the thing they lose. They lose hope that they can ever get better. Like, who wants to be on medication all their life, and who wants to feel sick all their life? Nobody. So it's
Exactly.
it's a tool. It's a tool to keep you alive and thrive, not survive.
Yeah. But I mean, the other thing that I noticed too is like the realistic nature of like herbal medicine. You know what I mean? Like, I think because Western medicine, you take a pill, you pretty much like get instant results. Like, it happens really fast, right?
Yeah.
So then when people start a herbal medicine protocol or do naturopathic medicine, they expect the same outcome
Yeah.
from what you're giving them. And the realistic nature is it took your body this long to get sick. It's going to take a good chunk of time to get better, right? It's like the same with mold. Like, you didn't just get mold out of your system and feel great overnight. It was like years
Yeah.
of like, getting it out of your system, doing the emotional stuff. And I think a lot of people, it's hard for them to stay on track when it comes to the healing protocol, because maybe they don't necessarily see something or they expect faster results. And then that's where they get stuck. So that's just like, it's just a reminder that it takes longer than you think it does. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like, it's more of a process. So you working with people, I'm curious, like, what do you find the biggest benefit with? Like, do you use supplements? Do you use nutrition? What's your kind of protocol or healing modality?
So for me, I think the biggest thing that like really works for me, first of all, yes, I do try to do avoidance as much as possible, because like you said, once you get affected by this, I was at a conference last week, and I was there for a couple of days, and it was just riddled in mold, like I have pictures where I just took it, like it's just everywhere. So I did have a day or two where I didn't feel great, and I came home and last week, didn't feel amazing, but I don't panic in those moments as much anymore. I just kind of tell myself, hey, like, you were exposed. It is what it is. So I upped my binders. I try to do sauna more often then. I definitely try to be more light, like give my body more grace on those days, because I think that's one thing that people really overlook is like, you're not being lazy,
Right.
your body needs rest. It's affected. So,
Yeah.
but for me, I think the biggest things that were, made an effect for me were the binders and the sauna. Like, that's usually kind of my go-to whenever I get exposed again, or whenever I'm not feeling good. I just kind of try to sweat it out.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, like, I love the sauna. Actually, I did an intense sauna protocol where I was pretty much in a sauna for 30 days straight. And yeah, it was crazy. I was actually having Herxheimer reactions, which I didn't know what Herxheimer reactions were at the time. So I was
Yeah.
just getting really sick and really nauseated, and I ended up pushing through it. But I did feel great after that. So
Yeah.
it's like, if you can, like, if you have access to a sauna, I'm all for the sauna. I love binders too. I don't know which binder you use. I'm a huge fan of like the Cellcore binders.
Yeah.
Have you tried them?
Yeah.
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 Okay.
Yeah.
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 Cellcore is amazing. I just wish it was more affordable. That's the part that kills me.
Yes, I wish it was more affordable, and definitely yeah, you wish it was a little bit cheaper for people.
Right? Yeah. But it works fantastic. And honestly, I don't know about you, but I haven't found anything else on the market that's at that level.
No, not at that level. Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, it's the same thing. As I said, I'm not a practitioner, so I can't prescribe it to people. That's another thing I wish it was. I get why they do it like
Right.
that. I wish I can, recommend it to more people, but it definitely was for me. It's the thing that moved the needle,
Yeah.
I took binders before that, you have the activated charcoal, you have so many other things, but like the biotoxin binder really just
Does it, right?
move
You
the needle.
feel
Yeah.
it. You
Yeah.
feel it immediately. Like, I like actually enjoyed taking it. And it's funny because I spent so much money on other binders. Like, I don't know if you stumbled upon BioRay.
Hmm.
Okay, I did buy Ray, didn't see too much from it. And then I ended up doing some like activated charcoal. I was just mixing through the binders. I was trying, like,
Yeah.
different probiotics. And then I found that sweet spot. But I do find that like Cellcore, and even when I did Cellcore, because I did the comprehensive protocol, which is the whole protocol. Is that what you did too?
As I said, I worked with a practitioner. I basically did that protocol, but then she
Okay,
added some other vitamins to kind of help support my immune system at that point. But it was
got
basically
got
the
it.
same thing.
Yeah, so I was doing that protocol and I did the energy drainage, which is like the phase one, and I didn't notice anything crazy. So it
Yeah.
was like, I did it and I was like, wow, like, I'm like, I just spent all this money and I'm like not noticing anything crazy, but I'm like, the science is there. These practitioners who formulated this line is amazing. I'm like, the testimonials are awesome. I'm just going to keep going.
Yeah.
And I did the second phase and then I was like, wow, I'm starting to feel really, really, really good. And I'm like, I started the third one and it like just kept getting better. And there was like days when it wasn't good and like days when it was good. But it's like, again, coming back to like, sometimes you just don't notice what you're doing
Yeah.
until you do it, right?
Yeah. And it takes a
Yeah.
second sometimes. Like some people will feel it right away. They, especially if you're really sensitive, it's even difficult to do. But
Right.
as you said, it's herbal. It's not a pill, so it takes a second. Like you're not gonna. I didn't feel it right away either. Like it didn't. I didn't take it the first month, and I was like, oh, I'm healed.
Right?
It takes time. I mean, I'm 2 years into it, and I'm still, I still take them, and I still work on my health because it does, regardless whether it's heavy metals, mold, parasites, and Lyme, it damages your body. It still does
Yeah.
affect you. So it's not like you can take something for 3 weeks and be like, okay, I'm done. It's a
Right.
process. It's definitely a process, but at least we have these things in our hands now that we can use. So I'm always
Exactly.
thankful for that.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I'm glad that you like found the way, and I'm glad that you're in this place where like you look vibrant, you look good. And I can assume like I mean, I know that's the other thing too. You don't always look sick when you have
Yeah.
mold. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like you don't always look sick when you have
Yeah.
parasites. It's like I'm not dying in a bed, so you must be fine. And even though
Yeah.
you feel like crap, but like it looks like you've come
Yeah.
further
Come
and like
back
you
from to life. Yeah.
yeah, which is great.
Yeah.
And so if people want to work with you, what are you doing right now? Are you doing health coaching?
So I'm kind of we do the Mold Hound inspections. So we have
Okay.
our dog that we inspect people's homes with. So we're, keeping busy with that and trying to help as many people as we can with that. But
Nice.
I'm also doing not health coaching, but more like life coaching for people
Cool.
to kind of find their way after illness, to, use their story and get it out there. And that's the thing that I see a lot with people after pain, after illness, whether, it's mold or anything else, is they can't really figure out what to do next. Because for me, like I didn't work for 6, 7 years
Right.
and I could not find a job to save my life, even a part-time one, because I had all these limitations, and I was
Yeah.
even scared to. So for me, when I was able to start working for myself, like, making even some kind of income online, that was kind of a goal of mine. Is first, with the dog, we put a lot of time into it to train with him and, to be able to help people that were in the exact same situation as us. But then I also wanted to help people find their way afterwards, because it does break you in many senses and it takes away so much from you. So as I tell people, my story's not special. There's so many other people that have the exact same thing that happens in different ways, or and they have such a voice and they can make such an impact. Like I fully believe in a ripple effect.
Yeah.
I had two girls that, they their stories were the reason that I even thought about mold. They were kind of the ones that put it out there, and they didn't have a huge following, nothing, because that's the thing I hear about all the time is, oh, well, you have a big following. Well, I didn't before. That's
Right. You started from
every
somewhere.
Yeah, I started from somewhere,
Yeah.
and everyone's life and everyone's story can make an impact. So that's kind of what I try to do is, I do the one-on-one coaching with the mold if people need help with that, but I also try to help people find their voice and, try to make some kind of income with that also, where you can both
Right.
help people use your story and, make a life for yourself where you're not, because as living with illness, usually you go through a lot of money and you
Oh yeah.
it really drains you financially
Well,
also. So
yeah.
it's something that I try to help people with too, to try to, find their ways of making income where they can still be at home and still do their protocols and work for themselves, so they don't have
Mm.
to be in moldy buildings and all that. So
I was gonna say
that's kind of where we're
you're doing literally God's work.
oh, honestly, I remember a day, you have some moments that are imprinted in your brain, and I think they'll forever stay there.
Mhm.
Um, Sorry, I'm gonna cry every time I
That's
think about
okay.
this story.
I was gonna say you're choking me up.
So I remember I was sitting in my room and all our bags in our house were packed. And this is before the dog came, but we were already planning just to move out, just to get me out of the house, just to, because I was doing so bad, just to try something.
Mhm.
But I had a really bad episode where I had really bad head pressure, like horrible head pressure. Like I felt like my head would blow. It was one of my worst symptoms. And, I had dizziness on top of it, and my body was so weak. And I have two little kids running around, and I remember the door being closed, and I remember my son knocking at the door, and he's like, Mama, come play with me. And I'm sick, and my husband's sitting there on the floor, and I'm sitting on the floor and I'm bawling my eyes out. And he's like, is Mama sick again? And I just broke down, and like I couldn't understand. I couldn't understand why God gave this to me, why I'm sick,
Mhm.
what is happening to me. Like it broke me in such a way hearing my child say that, you know, and thinking, hey, there's a chance he's going to lose me too on top of it. And I remember saying to my husband at that moment, I really hope that this is for not for any, like, nothing. I hope that one day, God willing, I will get out of this and I can help people. And that has stayed with me for so long because, like, yes, it's great, you know, it's great to have people messaging you. It's great to have a following and all of that, but like I really don't care about it.
No, I
Like
hear you.
I think that when you've been through this, like when you get messages of people saying, I realized I have it because of you, or, you know, I realized that my child's symptoms aren't normal. Like, it's not because you're like, oh, I'm so awesome. You're just like, I was there
Yep.
2 years ago, and because somebody else put it up, that's how I got out. So it's, you know,
Right.
it's the hope. Right now we have this great platform, social media, where, you know, it can be toxic at times, but it can also be really helpful and you can really help people through it. So,
Yep.
you know, my ripple effect can cause someone else's, and that's what I fully believe in.
100%.
God
Yeah.
uses your pain for purpose.
Oh, 100%, girl. 100%. I like to believe that too.
Yeah.
So if people want to work with you, what's the best way to contact you?
So you can DM me on my page. I'm not gonna lie, sometimes the DMs do get a little bit lost. I don't not love the Instagram's DMs. They just kind of go in random places.
Right?
So, I apologize if anyone's written me and I don't write you because I don't see all of them.
Yeah.
But I have a email on there on my, I have two websites. I have the non-toxic living and I have the Mold Hound. So if you want inspections, I have a moldhound.com where you can fill out the inspection form. And then if you, you know, want to work with me like one-on-one for pain to purpose or non-toxic living or coaching, I have it on there. And I'm kind of redoing my websites to make it a little bit easier, where I'll just kind of have it all in one place.
Yep.
So it'll be easier soon.
Perfect. Awesome. So I will have everything that you guys need in the show notes. And then if you have any questions for any reason you can't find anything, you guys can always message me too. Viktoriya, thank you for being on the show. Thank you for sharing all of your knowledge. And I'm like, thank you for doing what you do because you're helping a lot of people and it's important.
Thank you. I appreciate you for having me on, for all the
Yeah.
work you're doing. I have a special love for all people helping people with mold illness
Aw,
and Lyme and parasites, just because
yeah.
if it wasn't for my naturopath, I don't know where I'd be. So
Amen.
so
Well,
I
thank you.
appreciate that.
Perfect.